Warning: this podcast features adult subject matter, adult language, and things not meant for children to hear. Viewer discretion is advised. You've been warned. I don't know if this is actually working. We are going to try this. I've got a recording going just in case this doesn't work because my internet is very strange right now. Aside from that, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second episode of the What Did I Say show? The show where I can give recaps for all of the shit talking and shenanigans and whatnots we did during the actual I'm No Joe podcast for this last following week. This one talking about the UFC Washington, D.C. Fight Night / ESPN Fight Night on ESPN 7 card with a million names that we've talked about several times is absolutely terrible. Let's get right into it. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure if this is actually broadcasting, but I am recording it just in case it doesn't. Hopefully you guys can see me on the interwebs live right now. If not, I will be uploading the recorded version, assuming the recording holds, to YouTube, even if it doesn't make it here onto Mixer. Side note, if this is on Mixer, welcome to everyone on Mixer to this side of the house. If not, welcome to everyone on YouTube to what I generally am doing over on Mixer. I am showing very, very spotty recording on the stream, so I'm not sure if this is actually working or not. I can't tell right now. I'm going to assume it is kind of working, and you guys can probably at least hear the audio because me and Mixer are still having issues. But either way, let's jump right into it. There have been a couple of interesting announcements that pertain to things that we said in the episode that I am going to go over now instead of saving for this next week's I'm No Joe podcast, which, if you haven't heard yet, we have a very, very special guest coming in this weekend, so you are not going to want to miss this week's coming I'm No Joe podcast talking about UFC 245. But before we get to that point, let's jump in here. First thing that I want to talk about, this will absolutely get talked about again during the I'm No Joe, but I wanted to mention it here first. After we finished recording the I'm No Joe podcast Thursday night, literally right after, and I went back in and I started looking at what may have happened while we were live, because quite often recently, while we're doing the show on Thursday nights, something happens or something is announced, and it's one of those that you just kick yourself that you didn't get to mention during the show. So I'm going to start with that. First and foremost, they announced during our show Thursday night that March 14th's card will now include the addition of Johnny Walker versus Nikita Krylov, and I think that is a fucking spectacular matchup. So that one, again, will be gone back over a little more detail on an actual I'm No Joe episode. But as far as other interesting news that has happened, we talked about the UFC getting their lawsuit, or Mark Hunt rather, getting his lawsuit against the UFC dropped by a federal judge. Well, that shoe has turned around and kicked the other foot, because the UFC has now turned around and sued Mark Hunt for $388,000, saying that it is for legal fees, which, one, you guys are in the wrong. Two, fuck you. There's wrong on so many levels with that, but that is a thing. Couple interesting things here. Here we go. Liz Carmouche recently challenged for the title, albeit undeservingly. We all knew it wasn't going to end well. It didn't. Surprise, surprise. The UFC has officially released Liz Carmouche while she was doing promotions for the UFC. So, I'm not saying she deserved to be cut, but she definitely didn't deserve to be cut during promotions week for your company. The next thing we learned about was that while not doing promotions, the UFC has also released Renan Barão on a 5-fight losing streak, I believe now. So there is that as well. Um, not not good, but again, neither one of those will really be detrimental to the UFC itself. Now, that's all the real news that I had to go over here. Now we can get into some of the interesting things about this past weekend's combat sports. Let me see. Where do I start here? Oh, yeah. I know where to start. Anthony Joshua is a fucking bitch. He played safe. I'm a firm believer in the fact that you should not be able to win a belt off a judge's decision. Least of all, a judge's decision in a fight where you spent the entire time running away and hiding behind your jab and point fighting. You never engaged. You never really got a chance for Ruiz to engage because you were too busy literally running the fuck around the ring to get away from him. Anthony Joshua is a sack of fucking dog shit. I don't understand how he made it to the Olympics as a boxer unless the Olympic boxing is all only about point fighting now too. And if that's the case, the Olympics can go fuck themselves with that bullshit boxing. Point fighting isn't fighting. Period. Fight me. I don't give a fuck. I take my stance. I draw my line in the sand. I give no ground. Point fighting is not fighting. It is practice sparring for fucking credit. Bullshit. Fuck Anthony Joshua. Ruiz is the real champ. He at least went in there and went after it and tried to fucking fight. Anthony Joshua's a bitch. Fuck that. Fuck that. Now, aside from that, Glory 73 actually went off without a whole lot of real noteworthy events happening. KSW actually happened, this weekend as well, and did have a couple of interesting highlight reel fights, but nothing overall worth breaking down and going over here. What I do want to go over, is all of the absolutely ridiculous shit that happened at UFC Washington, D.C. this past weekend. So, first and foremost, when we get into this, before we even get to the damn fight, Matt Sales versus Bryce Mitchell. Doug Nasty, the man. Matt Sales missed weight by almost 4 pounds, 3.5 pounds. Bryce Mitchell, being the badass that he is, still took the fight. We'll talk about that again in just a little bit. But he wasn't the only one who missed weight. After spending their entire fight week using their press and their promotional opportunities to talk shit about Paige Van Zandt, completely oblivious and ignoring Marina Rodriguez, Cynthia Calvillo showed up to weigh-ins Friday morning using the hoop of shame completely naked and still missed weight by 4.5 fucking pounds. She was 2 pounds away from weighing in at the next weight class above her, and then had the balls to talk about how it was a tough weight cut, but I deserve to be here. What the fuck did you just say? Then, of course, after the fact, she said that, well, since the cut was a little rough, she might consider going up to the next class. Oh, that girl bothers me so bad. She's a mediocre at best talent to start with, and then she can't do the one of two things that is your job. Make weight, show up to fight. She showed up to fight. Didn't fight very well, but she showed up to fight, but she missed weight by almost a division-splitting amount. Fuck Cynthia Calvillo. As far as I'm concerned, she has dropped completely off the fucking radar and is not legitimately worthy of any kind of praise or promotion. She can go fuck all the way off. Now, that being said, let's get into some of the interesting things that happened during UFC Fight Night 147 / UFC Washington, D.C. / UFC on ESPN 7. Semicolon, Rosenstrike versus Overeem. How's that for a fucking name? Right out the gate, Murado came in with a hell of a fight against Trevor Smith and just absolutely decimated. 100% won his fight and a 50G for performance of the night bonus. 100% earned. One of my favorite early fights of the card. Then, we get back to what I was talking about earlier here. Bryce Doug Nasty Mitchell versus Matt Sales. Not only did Matt Sales come in missing weight, Bryce Mitchell still beat his ass. And not only beat his ass, but learned, we now know, through YouTube tutorial videos, how to do the fucking twister, and submitted Matt Sales with a fucking twister to earn himself the other 50G performance of the night bonus. Well deserved. I encourage anyone who is a fan of jiu-jitsu to go back and watch this weekend's Bryce Mitchell versus Matt Sales matchup. The second he grabbed Matt Sales' arm and pulled it behind his head, I was literally yelling to the people that I was watching the fight with, he's gonna do a fucking twister, he's gonna do, and before I could say it the second time through, he had locked it up, cranked it, and was pulling it over, and you see fucking Sales tap. Get that man his fucking camo shorts. Reebok, what the fuck are you doing? This man is a legitimate small town hero, rising star in the UFC. I've been singing his praises since he was on The Ultimate Fighter. I'm still singing his fucking praises now. Get that man his camo shorts. Fuck's sake. Now, moving on from there. Thiago Alves has not been any kind of threat to anyone in the UFC in a legitimate long time. Now, this is one of those situations where we say, if you're in the UFC, you're not a soup can, but that's not always true. Sometimes you get into the UFC as a legitimate fighter and degrade yourself back to soup can status, and the UFC just doesn't quite cut you because you still hold a little bit of value for them somehow. Thiago Alves is a fucking shining embodiment of this situation. First and foremost, Thiago Alves is not his fucking name, never has been, never will be. That is one of those things that some Brazilian fighters do where they take the name of the gym or the master that they have trained under and make it their own name, which is stupid as shit. I understand giving respect to the people who train you, but changing your name and then leaving the country where people who don't know that that's what you do don't realize that's not your fucking name. That aside, Thiago Alves has absolutely weathered himself down from the status of legitimate kind of mediocre fighter to fucking soup can with a UFC label on the front of it here. He's absolute fucking trash at this point. Still comes out, still tries, still gives it a valiant effort, but like we saw this weekend, when you step in the ring against the fucking Dirty Bird, you better When you step in the ring against the Dirty Bird, fuck. Give me just a second here. Sorry. Apparently my throat was too parched to speak. When you step in against the Dirty Bird, you better make sure you have all your I's dotted and all your T's crossed, because he's not going to give you an easy fight ever. We saw that. The Dirty Bird, Tim Means, is absolutely back and choked the fuck out of Thiago Alves in a beautiful fashion. Absolutely glad to see that man back, and back on the right track at that. Then we have the Matt Wyman versus Joe Solecki matchup, where, again, Matt Wyman, I'm not saying directly he came in as a soup can. He came in with some hype, but he's also been gone quite a bit. He's been out of the octagon more than he has been in the octagon during his career with the UFC. He is absolutely one of the old guard, as it were, coming up against Joe Solecki, who I believe is 23 or 24. New, up-and-comer, young kid, very respectful, very polite, just the type of guy you want to see do well, and he absolutely did. He beat the brakes off of Matt Wyman the entire fight. Absolutely dominant, controlled the whole fight, and then at the very end, literally as the bell rang, Matt Wyman, for some reason, started talking shit to Joe Solecki, and said, "What the fuck are you gonna do?" To which Joe Solecki immediately looked back and said, how did he phrase it? "I'm here," or "What are you gonna do?" Solecki said, "I'm gonna put you out of a job." Well done. And after a performance like that, Matt Wyman needs to shut his fucking mouth. He is full soup can status. He either needs to shut the fuck up and start climbing from the bottom again, because that's where he's at. He's at the very bottom of the UFC stack. You can either start climbing from the bottom again, or you can shut the fuck up and go to Bellator or Ryzen or PFL or one of the other minor league organizations, because you don't deserve a shot in one. You would get beat ragged in 1FC. But he either needs to learn to shut the fuck up, or he needs to get back to basics. Or excuse me, needs to learn to shut the fuck up and get back to basics. Or go find a new organization to fight in, as far as I'm concerned. Now that will move us to Cody Stamann versus Song Yadong. This was a fucking great matchup for anyone who did not catch it. Cody Stamann's wrestling was on fucking point, just like we thought it was going to be. The problem was, just kind of like we thought it was going to be as well, Song Yadong had too crisp striking for him and could not be held down. Yes, Cody Stamann took him down multiple times, but could never hold him there and never did any damage once he got him there. This is one of those situations where I don't always agree with or advocate for, but I 100% agree. Cody Stamann versus Song Yadong was called a draw, and I 100% agree with it, because Stamann didn't really get outdone by the striking 100%, because he still was allowing himself to be taken down, but he wasn't ever held down. On the same token, Cody Stamann never really out-wrestled or wrestled Song Yadong to a point where he couldn't come back, but he also was eating shots in the meanwhile while it was happening. I believe it was a very fair matchup, and a draw is a very, very fair justification for that match. Excuse me. Now, moving along from there, I am a firm believer that Aspen Ladd is nothing but fucking hype. She has not given me any reason to believe anything to the contrary about her career. We didn't really get a whole lot of information to make you change that opinion this weekend. What I will say is that if Aspen Ladd started round 1 the way that she started round 3, we wouldn't have went to round 3. The problem is, in seeing what she did coming out in round 3 after the ear beating her corner, they're still talking about how much her corner was yelling and screaming and cussing at her, which, fuck you, that doesn't mean shit. They're motivating their fighter. Clearly it worked, because she came out in round 3 and won the fight in, I think, 15 seconds? 15 seconds into round 3? So, one, get off her coach's nuts for screaming and yelling at her. It's their job to motivate and influence their fighter to do what they need to do to win. They did that. So, fuck that conversation right out the gate. But moreover than that, the little glimpse that we saw in the beginning of that third round where she came out and just went right the fuck after Kunitskaya. Yana Kunitskaya is a trash fighter to begin with. Realistically, if Aspen Ladd had any fucking talent, she should have taken her out in the first round. Kunitskaya is what I like to refer to as the Russian dollar store cloned copy of Paige Van Zandt. They tried to take a blonde fighter and make her popular, and if you follow her social media, you'll understand what I'm saying. Kunitskaya spends more time trying to be attractive and do the Paige Van Zandt model on Instagram than she does worrying about her fighting. And when you see her step in the cage, it is very apparent. Kunitskaya is a fucking garbage fighter, period. There is nothing in her game worth bragging about. She is 100% absolutely the exception to the rule, in that she came into the UFC as a soup can because they wanted her in the 145 pound division, because there are literally only 7 women in that division, which doesn't really make it much of a fucking division to begin with, in my opinion. But we saw Aspen Ladd, after motivation from her corner, come out and absolutely fucking dominate that fight. So, props on a win, but it shows me that you're still absolutely all hype and you're way too green behind the ears to be a valid threat to any division in women's MMA right now. Get your shit together. Stop coming in with that blah mentality. Whatever the coaches got fired up in you in round 3, you need to bring that from round 1, or you need to stop. Because you can't come in half-hearted and then get excited late in the game. In the world of combat sports, it doesn't work, and we don't want to see it as fans. So, yes, she got the W, but That doesn't mean that you're on a hot streak right now. That doesn't mean that you're good. Getting a win doesn't mean that you're good in the UFC, and this is a perfect example of that. So, we'll see where they go from here. Now, moving along from there, one of the least and most interesting fights of the night. Stefan the Skyscraper Struve, that's a tongue twister, versus Ben the Kenosha Killer Rothwell. Now, first and foremost, if you didn't watch, this is an absolutely controversial fight. We were referring to it in the moment as a dick kick-a-thon. So, if you aren't aware of this particular situation, Stefan Struve is literally, no exaggeration, no shit talking, he is literally the tallest fighter ever to compete in the UFC, standing barefoot at 6 foot 11.7 inches tall. He is quite literally 7 foot tall with no shoes on. That being said, Ben Rothwell, unfortunately, not once, but twice during the fight, went to throw an absolutely malicious body kick, which to any normal human being, any opponent his size, would have landed directly in the stomach and fucking hurt as a body shot. But because Stefan Struve is quite literally 7 feet tall, kicked him right in the cup. Now, the first time, directly in the cup. I will acknowledge that. They showed the replay. You can see it. But after that, Struve kicked Rothwell in the cup, which, if you're interested in this fight, go back and watch it, because you will see what I'm talking about here. I'm not saying in any stretch of the imagination that getting kicked in the dick doesn't hurt. It absolutely does. It is literally one of the most intense pains on the planet, and has been mentioned by doctors that it is almost indescribable the amount of pain and nerve response that a man gets when he is kicked in the cock and balls. I'm not saying it doesn't hurt. What I'm saying is, as a man, when you've been kicked in the dick multiple times, and as a middle-aged man, everyone should have been, not intentionally, but life happens. So throughout the course of your life as a man, you get kicked in the good and plenties. It's not fun, but it happens. You learn from it and you adapt to it. That being said, it's one of those things, like if you've ever hit your funny bone walking through a doorway, you know what that feels like. So when you see someone walking through a doorway and lightly tap their funny bone on the corner of a wall and then throw themselves to the ground and start screaming bloody murder and ask to have an ambulance called for them, that it's the end of the world, you know that they're playing it up. You can tell that they're faking it. This is one of those situations where Stefan Struve, yes, got dick kicked. Not cool, not fun, but also hammed it the fuck up for the cameras. Obviously so. There were at least 3 points during the first one, at least 2 during the second time that this happened, where you could see Stefan Struve immediately drop to the ground, roll around a little bit, and then peek out from behind his arm to see if the cameras were watching him, or to look. You caught him looking directly into the camera multiple times. He was playing it up like a soccer player. That being said, Big Ben still put him the fuck down. And I get that some people are going to call the stoppage controversial, but I don't give a fuck. Go back and rewatch that fight. The stoppage was legitimate. Now, that brings us back to the other half of the weight missing duo in the co-main event, Cynthia Calvillo versus Marina Rodriguez. Fight of the night. Excuse me, not fight of the night. Weight being not the issue here, because weight only matters on the scale. When you get to the actual fight, you're already fully rehydrated, or as rehydrated as you can be, and back to mostly normal, I use that air quotes, mostly normal sense of your fighting ability. And Cynthia Calvillo came in just absolutely sluggish and slow. On the other hand, Marina Rodriguez came in and had absolutely crisp, clean, very technical striking the entire fight. This one was a little more controversial to me. Calvillo did make a hell of a comeback attempt in round 3, and then this fight was called a majority draw as well. It's tough. Calvillo looked like shit for most of the fight. Excuse me. But Rodriguez was not able to answer everything she was caught with in the third. I don't think the draw was a right call. I think even with a good round for Calvillo, she still lost the fight. She should have lost the fight. I'm glad she lost her money, but the thing that stands out to me the most is that this is a situation where Calvillo came in missing weight, and by giving her a draw, I believe they both still get, or neither one of them, rather, get win money. So Marina Rodriguez is actually being punished in this situation. She showed up on weight. Calvillo missed. That means she gets her 20% of Calvillo's purse. But she won that fight. She showed up on weight like she was supposed to. She fought like she was supposed to. And in many people's opinions, won that fight, but doesn't get her win money because it was a draw, not a win. I don't agree with that. I think Calvillo is fucking trash to begin with, and I think this is an example of her being trash, and I think Rodriguez ended up losing the win money she was rightfully entitled to because of Cynthia Calvillo's bullshit, and I don't agree with that. Now, one little thing here. Well, we'll get to that in just a second. We'll save that for a minute. The main event of the evening. UFC Fight Night 147 / UFC Washington, D.C. / UFC on ESPN 7, semicolon. Rosenstruik versus Overeem. Long, stupid name. Overall, very interesting fight card. The main event, the namesake fight on the marquee, Rosenstruik versus Overeem. One hell of a fight. Now, I will say this. A lot of people either don't know or don't acknowledge the fact that after Alistair Overeem was absolutely battered by Curtis Blaydes, he did something that almost no one in the UFC does, at least not as publicized as what he has done is. He went and actually got in touch with Curtis Blaydes and asked if they could train together. Said that some of the things he saw Curtis Blaydes doing in that fight he would really like to learn, and being the legitimate, well-rounded legend that Overeem himself is, having been around for a while, offered to help teach Blaydes some things that might help him along in his career, because at this point, Alistair doesn't have a lot of time left. He says he's here for one last run at gold, but we saw this weekend that's not a realistic possibility here. For those that don't know, Alistair Overeem went and trained with Curtis Blaydes, and it was a very apparent difference in his fighting ability and style that we saw this weekend. He was doing legitimate wrestling moves, and we all know that Alistair has some jiu-jitsu background. He's not a slouch on the ground when it comes to submissions, but what we saw this weekend was legitimate wrestling from Alistair Overeem that 100% came from his time training with Curtis Razor Blaydes. That being said, it was not enough to stop Rosenstruik. Yes, the wrestling did absolutely impede his game plan, and you could see that Alistair had a game plan going into this fight and stuck to it very well. The problem is that game plan just wasn't good enough to get him the W. And in the last moments of the last round, excuse me, I don't know why I'm yawning so much. But just a moment, let me drink some more of my coffee, which apparently isn't keeping me awake right now. Like I was saying, in the last moments of the last round of the last fight of the evening, out of nowhere, we see a beautiful setup from Jairzinho Rosenstruik with, I believe it was a fake left, hard right combo. Or soft left, missed left, hard right combo. He hit Alistair Overeem so hard, and this is not an exaggeration, and I know that the Reem has been fucking rocked before. That shot from Francis scared everybody, and it's been deemed the astral projection moment when you see the top of Alistair's head touch the middle of his shoulder blades because it bent his neck all the way back. He got hit so hard by Alistair. But Jairzinho Rosenstruik, and I believe it was at 4:52 of the last round, clipped Alistair with a shot, a right, that hit him so fucking hard it dropped him to his ass and tore his lip. I believe they said it was 1.5 inches up. Robbie Lawler's was very similar, but Robbie's kind of went in and stayed on the lip itself. Alistair's ripped on the corner and went up into the cheek. It was completely flayed open, and I believe they said it took almost 24 stitches to close it back up. The interesting thing that happened after that is something that we actually were talking about. I don't remember if we talked about it on the show. I know we were talking about it off air, as well as the week before that. And again, I don't remember if we made it on air to the show or if it was just something that we were talking about behind the scenes. But Jairzinho Rosenstruik won that fight and then called out Francis Ngannou. I think that is a terrific matchup. And a great follow-up for what we saw. Excuse me. Fucking hiccups. I'm having a hell of a day here. On top of a great matchup, it is a great follow-up to what we saw in Rosenstruik versus Overeem, especially after we saw what Francis was able to do to Overeem before his kind of transformation, his reformation of his style here. So I think that would be a great matchup to follow. Now, the one other thing that I did forget to mention earlier that I am going to go ahead and mention now before we wrap this up and get the fuck out of here, there was one other extremely sad and pathetic fucking event that happened this weekend, and I get it. Not every event that happens is going to be for everybody. This is beyond that. This is a terrible, terrible show that should have never happened to begin with. Tito Ortiz, the 50-something-year-old, I believe he's about to be 50. I think he's 49 now. But way past relevant fighting age, way past relevant talent fighting, Tito Ortiz against retired mixed martial artist and retired WWE wrestler Alberto Del Rio. For those who aren't in the know, Alberto Del Rio generally fights with a luchador mask on. And I say generally because he's only fought a couple of times as an MMA fighter, but generally when he did so, kept his luchador mask on, which is stupid as shit. Perfect example, the last time he was notably in the octagon and again, wore that stupid luchador mask in an MMA matchup, not in a WWE matchup. He fought Mirko fucking Krokop. And Mirko Krokop did exactly to a WWE wrestler what you would think a world kickboxing champion would do to a former professional wrestler. He kicked the shit out of him. And this is one of those examples that Joe Rogan uses all the time when he talks about why you shouldn't cross sports if you're not legitimate at it. Excuse me. Krokop kicked him in the fucking head and dropped him like a sack of potatoes. And then before they cut away, you see the camera zoom in and there is blood running down the face under the mask of Alberto Del Rio. Surprise, surprise, put Alberto Del Rio today after watching his absolutely embarrassing social media training videos. And big fucking surprise, Tito beat the shit out of him. Dropped him in the first fucking round, ended him. The thing that was the most cringy to me about this whole thing is that Tito went full Colby Covington. He came out wearing a Trump 2020 hat, a Trump 2020 t-shirt, waving a Trump 2020 flag. Without getting too deep into politics, fuck Donald Trump and fuck all of his ignorant, fact-ignoring supporters. This is 100% a WWE style walkout, taking a page directly from Colby Covington's book. And guess what? Nobody likes Colby Covington for this fucking act either. And it is 100% an act. He turns this shit on for the cameras. He's playing a WWE heel because he has no fucking personality. Now Tito's taking a page out of that book, and it makes me cringe. So hopefully we don't see Tito in the fucking octagon again. I don't give a shit who there is out there. I don't want to see him fight again. And 99.98% of the fighting world doesn't either. So hopefully we don't have to see that shit again. But at this point, I'm out of recaps from the weekend to go over with you fine folks. So before I let you go, like I said, I'm not sure if this is uploading properly or not to Mixer in the moment, but I've got a recording as a backup just in case. That being said, if you're only watching this on Mixer, please come over to YouTube and check out the I'm No Joe podcast, where where some guests and I go over much more detail, much more of the fights, much more of the full event breakdowns, and give our thoughts and predictions on them. If you're seeing this on YouTube, keep your eyes peeled. Generally, with the exception of this one, during the weekend on Sunday afternoons, I like to do a little bit of a recap, and that's why I've created this, show, because I'm usually doing this recap just with people hanging out in a chat room, so why not put it on video and let you guys see what I got right, what I got wrong, give me your feedback and your thoughts as well. So what I will say is that I don't think it's an option on Mixer, but this will inevitably be uploaded to YouTube. So when you see this on YouTube, and hopefully you will, if you liked it, if you agreed with what I said, if you think I'm giving valid points or valid opinions here, please consider giving me a thumbs up, a subscribe, maybe even share this episode so we can help grow the damn thing. On the other side of that coin, if you think I'm just an idiot sitting in an armchair talking out my ass without knowing what I'm saying, give me a thumbs down. I won't dispute it because I've earned it. What I will say is that if you are willing to support the stream, share an episode, head over to the link in the description, pick up some gear for the meter to help support. Go over to the Patreon, become a Patreon. You get some exclusive shit that no one else gets. You will be impressed and pleased with the things that we're working on for Patreon only people. If you don't like Patreon because you don't want them to get a cut, there's also a direct PayPal link down in the bottom. Any support is appreciated, whether you're giving monetarily or you're sitting in a chat or you're just sharing an episode. I appreciate everyone who's helping me try to grow this thing, but we're going to call that all for now. So remember, don't let ignorance stop you. You can root for anything. Have a great night, folks, and we'll see you next week for the I'm No Joe podcast for UFC 245 with a very special guest. So keep your eyes peeled. We'll see you then. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening, but they fought with expert timing. There were funky Chinamen from funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up, they were chopping them down. It's an ancient Chinese art, and everybody knew their part. From a fainting to a slip, and a kicking from the hip. Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening, but they fought with expert timing.
I've got another confession to make. I'm your fool. Everyone's got their chains to break, holding you. Were you born to resist or be abused? Is someone getting the best, the best, the best, the best of you? Is someone getting the best? I swear I'll never give